Unit 3 of Sale of Goods Act basically talks about transfer of property. In fact, you will find that almost all the topics in this unit is about transfer of property. So, when we say transfer of property, what are we basically talking about? We are talking about the ownership being transferred from the seller to the buyer, right? Along with the goods, the physical possession of the goods. Now, this transfer of, now this is one topic, you need to listen to this very carefully. I'm not saying it's tough. It's just tricky. So, you need to understand each of the concepts very carefully so that you are very clear with it. So, listen carefully to whatever we are discussing. Now, when I say transfer of property, transfer of property takes place in 3 stages, right? There are 3 stages or 3 steps in which transfer of property takes place. And what are these 3 stages or steps? First, transfer of property in the goods. Then transfer of possession of the goods, and finally passing of risk. Right? There are 3 stages in which transfer of property takes place. Transfer of property in the goods, then transfer of possession of the goods, and the last one, passing of risk. Now, because I have written it in this sequence, because I have written first property, then I have written possession, and finally I have written passing of risk, doesn't mean this is the order. Please understand, I have written it in a sequence, doesn't mean that this is the sequence or order in which the property will be transferred. No. In fact, understand, there is no such sequence at all. There is no such specific order given by law at all. No. So basically, when I am saying there is no specific order, what it means is any of it can happen one after the other, all of it can happen together. Anyway, property can happen first, possession can happen first, risk can happen, anything depending on the terms of the contract. So because I have written it in this order, please understand this is not the sequence. Please understand this is not the sequence. There is no specific sequence as such. There is no such order. Depending on the contract, any one can happen before the other. Now, when I say property in the goods, I already told you in the first lecture itself for Sale of Goods Act that when I say property in the when I say property in the goods, I am basically meaning, this phrase means the what? Ownership of the goods, right? So the phrase property in the goods means what? It means the ownership of the goods. And when I say possession of the goods, when we say possession of the goods, what are we talking about? The physical goods, right? So when I say property in the goods means the ownership of the goods. When I say possession of the goods, it means what? The physical goods, right? I repeat again, property in the goods means the ownership of the goods, and possession of the goods means the physical possession of the goods. Risk. If you remember, when I was teaching you yesterday the difference between sale and agreement to sell, I very clearly told you that whoever is the owner, risk is borne by that person irrespective of who has the goods, right? Whoever is the owner, risk is borne by that person, irrespective of who is the owner of the goods. And so tell me one thing, when I say risk or loss to goods, right? When I say risk or loss to goods, tell me, loss is something which is associated with physical goods or the price of the goods. I repeat again, when I say loss to goods, tell me, loss to goods means the loss to the physical goods, or it means the loss of what we say, loss something which is connected to payment. Obviously physical goods. Loss is something which is connected with the goods. It's not connected with payment. So that's the reason the first statement given here is risk passes with ownership, whether delivery is made or not. Right? Risk passes with ownership, whether delivery is made or not. So you have delivered the goods or you have not delivered the goods. Ownership is transferred, risk is transferred. Right? So risk passes with ownership, whether delivery is made or not. Please understand, when I say risk of the goods, it is something which is associated with physical goods. It's not something which is associated with payment. So risk passes with ownership whether delivery is made or not. Now please understand, can I say till the time the seller is the owner of the goods, the risk is with the seller? You have to tell me yes or no. Can I say till the time the seller is the owner of the goods, the risk is with the seller? Yes. But once the ownership is transferred to the buyer, risk also passes on to the buyer. Right? So till the seller is the owner of the goods, the risk is with the seller. But once the ownership is transferred to the buyer, risk passes to the buyer. So risk passes with ownership whether delivery is made or not. Till the time the seller is the owner, risk is with the seller. But once the ownership is transferred to the buyer, risk passes on to the buyer. Is it clear? Now tell me one thing. Can the seller and the buyer agree? The buyer says to the seller that, see seller, I know I am the owner of the goods, but since you have the possession of the goods, risk is with you. Only when I receive the goods, I will bear the risk. I repeat again, can the buyer and seller have such a contract? The buyer says to the seller that, see, the goods are with you. Even though you have transferred the ownership to me, the goods are with you. So you will be responsible for the goods, and if something happens to the goods, you will be liable and I will not be liable. Unless you don't give me the delivery, I am not liable. But once you give me the delivery, I will be liable. Can they have such a contract? Yes. So risk passes with ownership whether delivery is made or not. Till the time the seller is the owner, risk is with the seller. But once the ownership is transferred to the buyer, risk passes on to the buyer. However, the parties may agree differently to bear the risk. Did you understand? Yes? Now, I'm going to give you a few examples. You have to listen to each of this, and before I give the answer, you should have it. S sold his goods to B. Right? S sold his goods to B. The goods were with S. The goods are destroyed. I repeat again, S sold the goods to B, and the goods were with S only and the goods are destroyed. Who will bear the loss? Obviously B. Risk passes with ownership whether delivery is made or not. Correct. S sold his goods to B and the goods are still with S. S says to B, please take your goods. The goods are ready. Please kindly take the delivery. B is like, yeah, I'll take it. Don't worry. I will take it. But that I will take it never came. The goods were destroyed. Who will bear the loss? Who will bear the loss? Seller or buyer? Seller, buyer. Because he is the owner of the goods. Now listen carefully. S sold his goods to B. I repeat again. S sold his goods to B. And B is saying to S, the goods are still with S. B is requesting S, please deliver the goods to me. S is like, yeah, wait, I will deliver. I repeat again, S sold his goods to B, but the goods are still with S. B is consistently telling S that please deliver the goods, please deliver. He's like, yeah, don't worry, I will. Your goods will be delivered to you only. But there are no goods and the goods are destroyed. Now, who will bear the loss? The goods were never delivered and the goods are destroyed. Now, who will bear the loss? Think and tell me, who will bear the loss? B is the owner. Yes, B is the owner. But can I say here S is at fault? Because B was ready to take the delivery, but S was not in a position to deliver the goods. So whose fault is it? S. So who will bear the loss? S. Risk is generally borne by the owner, but if any party is at fault, the defaulting party shall bear the risk. I repeat again, risk is generally borne with ownership. Risk will pass with ownership irrespective of whether you have the goods or not. But if any party is at fault, the defaulting party shall bear the risk. So who will bear the risk? Is it clear to everyone? Yes? S sold his diamonds to B. But B was like, he was traveling outside. So he told S that, see, I can keep it in my house, but there will be no one. I'm going out for a vacation. So kindly keep the diamonds with you only. Once I'm back, I'll collect them. Right? I repeat again, S sold his goods to B, diamonds to B. And but B says that, see, Mr. S, I'm going out and I would be back after a few days. So could you kindly hold on the diamonds on my behalf for the next couple of days? He says, no problem. Now what he does is, he keeps those diamonds on his windowsill. He says early morning the sun rays would fall on these diamonds and they will they will shine over me and I will be like shine bright like a diamond. So he kept it on the windowsill. One day he woke up but no shine bright like a diamond because there is no diamond. Someone stole them. Who is liable? I repeat again, S sold diamonds to B on B's request. S kept it, but he kept it on his windowsill. One day, no shine bright like a diamond because no diamond stolen. Who will bear the risk? Who will bear the risk? S, B. Can I say S here is the bailee of the goods? Yes, because B entrusted his goods with S. So S is the bailee of the goods. So tell me, as a bailee, should he take care of the goods or not? Yes, he did not take care of the goods. Who will bear the loss? S. So I repeat again, risk passes with ownership whether delivery is made or not. Till the time the ownership is with the seller, seller will bear the risk. But once the ownership is transferred to the buyer, the risk passes on to the buyer. However, the parties may agree differently to bear the risk. If any party is at fault, the defaulting party shall bear the risk. I hope this is clear to everyone. Yes. So property in the goods is ownership, possession is physical goods, and passing of risk is whoever is the owner will bear the risk, irrespective of who has the goods. But if any party is at fault, the defaulting party shall bear the risk. Did you get it? Yes. Now the next topic. Now what is important to know is, when does the ownership transfer from the seller to the buyer? When is the time when the transfer of ownership takes place from the seller to the buyer? So the next point of discussion here is, what is the time when the ownership transfers from the seller to the buyer? Why is it important to know the time of transfer of ownership? Why is it important to know the time of transfer of ownership? First of all, to know who has the jus in rem. Yes or no? To know who has the jus in rem. Only the owner has the proprietorial rights over the goods, and I can know who has the jus in rem only when I know who is the owner of the goods. Yes? If anything happens to the goods, if there is a loss to the goods, who will bear the loss? The owner. So again, it is important to know who is the owner of the goods. Yes or no? And then tell me, my goods lost because of you. Because of your fault, my goods are lost. Can I come and claim those damages from you? Because of your fault, my goods are lost. Can I come and claim those damages from you? Yes or no? Yes. So let us say the goods are, S sold his goods. I mean, there is a contract of sale between S and B, and because of a third party's fault, T, the goods are lost. So can we sue T to recover the damages? Yes. But who will sue? The owner will sue. Obviously, the owner only has a right to recover the damages. And how will we know? And that is one of the reasons we need to know whether the ownership still is with the seller or the buyer, or it has passed on to the buyer. So, why it is important to know who has the ownership, to know who has the jus in rem, to know who has the liability to bear the loss, to know who has the right to sue a third party if the goods are destroyed due to a third party. Now, when we say time of transfer, Act has given two cases. The first is where the intention of the parties is known. The first is where the intention of the parties is known. The second case is where the intention of the parties is not known. What is this intention known, intention not known? Let us say there is a contract between S and B, and S says to B, I am going to sell you my goods, the ownership of which would pass on to you after 10 days. Right? I repeat again, S says to B, S and B has a contract where S is going to sell his goods to B, and the ownership of the goods will pass on to B after 10 days, right? Can we say in this contract a time has been mentioned when the ownership will be transferred? Yes. Can I say in this contract the time has been mentioned when the ownership will transfer? Yes or no? Yes, it is mentioned after 10 days. So can we say the intention is known? Yes, the contract specifies the intention of the parties as to when they want the ownership to be transferred. So, when will the ownership be transferred? After 10 days. So, ownership is transferred as per the what? Intention. Ownership is transferred as per the intention. On the other hand, let us take another case. S says to B, I will sell you my goods where the ownership will transfer after the payment of price. So when will the ownership transfer? Only after the payment of price. Now you would tell me, ma'am, you told us that time, payment or delivery does not define ownership. Correct, I agree. But here this clause is given in the contract. So there it becomes dependent on payment. If such a clause is not given, then it is not dependent on payment or delivery. But here this clause is given that ownership will pass only when you pay me. So then it becomes dependent on it. Is it clear to everyone? So where the contract specifies the intention of the parties about when they want to transfer the ownership, the transfer of ownership will take place as per the terms of the contract, as per the intention. But when the intention is not known, depending on the type of goods, the ownership is transferred. Depending on the type of goods, the ownership is transferred. Type of goods, ma'am, how? We will discuss this. We have not discussed yet. This is another very long topic which we will discuss after this. But if the intention is given, then it is transferred as per whatever they agree. But if nothing is given, then depending on whether the goods are specific or uncertain, depending on that, the ownership is transferred. Is it clear? This we will do in details after this, so don't worry. Till this point, is it clear to everyone? Yes? So, before we move to the next point, is it clear to everyone? Are you sure about it? Yes? Now, moving on to the specific and uncertain. Now, 10 minutes, you can just keep down all your pens and everything and just listen to what I'm saying. Let us first talk about specific goods. When is the ownership transferred? This we are talking about when the seller and the buyer do not agree to anything as to the time of transfer of ownership. Right? In this we are actually discussing this topic is basically when the seller and buyer have no contract as to when the ownership will be transferred. Now, you already know what is specific goods, goods which have been identified and agreed upon, right? So, when I say I want this pen, what is it? Specific goods. Now, the first case for a specific goods is if the specific goods are in a deliverable state. The first situation for specific goods is if the specific goods are in a deliverable state. Let us understand what does the word deliverable state mean. What do we mean by the word deliverable state? Ma'am, I can give the delivery. Ma'am, you can take the delivery. Okay. It is not you can give the delivery, I can take the delivery. No. Deliverable state means that state of the goods where the buyer is bound to take. That is, under the contract of sale, the buyer, deliverable state means that state of the goods where it is the obligation of the buyer to take the goods. So, I repeat again, if the specific goods are in a deliverable state, what do I mean by deliverable state? It is the duty of the buyer to take those goods. If the specific goods are in a deliverable state, when will the ownership? First of all, deliverable state is buyer is bound to take the delivery of the goods. So, when will the ownership transfer? Let us take a case. You go to the bookstore and you select 50 books. I know, it sounds like a joke. Most of us don't feel like reading also. I am a book lover, so I cannot even say that. But most of you, these days with too much of the gadgets and everything, we don't even feel like reading. I somehow don't even like e-books. For me, it is paper book. The smell of the paper is something that, I should feel it while I'm reading. Then only I enjoy the book. Anyway, if I say, let's say you go to the bookstore and you select 50 books and you say to the seller, can we say these are specific goods? Yes, you've selected them. So these are specific goods. You say to the seller, I want to purchase these books. He says, okay. When is the ownership transferred? I repeat again, you go to a bookstore, you select 50 books, you say to the seller, you want to purchase these 50 books. He says, okay sir, I'll sell it to you. When is the ownership transferred? Ma'am, after you pay the price. Yes, ma'am, after the delivery is made. Now, before I actually continue with this topic, remember, what did I tell you? Contract, that is ownership rather, is not dependent on delivery or payment. This was the one thing that I told you in the first lecture of Sale of Goods Act, that delivery or payment does not define ownership. Even if you have not paid the price, you may be the owner. Even if you have paid the price, you may not be the owner. Even if you have the goods, you may not be the owner. Even if you don't have the goods, you may be the owner. So can you say that only when you pay the price ownership is transferred? No. No. But ma'am, here you told us, so that is because the contract says so. Otherwise, no. So you go to the bookstore, you select 50 books, you like them, you decide to purchase them, you say to the shopkeeper, I want to purchase these books. He says, okay. When is the ownership transferred? When he says, okay. So ownership is transferred immediately. So first case is, in case of specific goods, if the specific goods are in a deliverable state, when will the ownership be transferred? The ownership is transferred immediately. So I repeat again, in case of specific goods in a deliverable state, the ownership is transferred immediately. Now, you say to the shopkeeper that I want to purchase these 50 books. He says, okay. You say, I cannot take the delivery right now. My staff will come on Sunday and collect the books. Right? I repeat again, you go to the bookstore, you select 50 books, you say to the shopkeeper, I want to purchase these 50 books. He says, okay. You say, I cannot take the books right now. Sunday, my staff will come and collect the books. When is the ownership transferred? On Sunday? No. Immediately. When is the ownership transferred? Immediately. Now, before he could take the goods, not due to the fault of any party, there is a fire at the bookstore and all the books are burned down, right? Before your driver could collect the books, there was a fire at the bookstore, not fault of any party, and all the books are burned down. Who will bear the loss? Risk is borne by the, I said no one was at fault. Risk is borne by the owner, irrespective of who has the possession of the goods. So, in case of specific goods, if they are in a deliverable state and the agreement does not say anything, ownership is transferred immediately. Is this clear to everyone? Yes. The next case is, in case of a specific goods not in a deliverable state. Right? Now they are not in a deliverable state. You select 50 books and you say to the shopkeeper, I want to purchase these 50 books, but I want them to be bound. Right? I repeat again, you say to the shopkeeper, you select 50 books, you say to the shopkeeper, I want to purchase these 50 books, but I want them bound. He says, okay. Now tell me, here, unless the books are bound, are you liable to take the goods? Are you bound to take the goods? No. Unless the books are bound, you are not bound to take, unless the binding is done, you are not bound to take the delivery. So, is it in a deliverable state? No. When will it be in a deliverable state? Only after the binding is done. So, when will the ownership be transferred? After the seller gets the goods to a deliverable state. Yes or no? Yes. So, if the goods are not in a deliverable state, it is not, ownership cannot be transferred. So, ownership can be transferred only after they are bought to a deliverable state. Now, seller got the goods to a deliverable state. Will I get a dream? My goods are ready, let me go and take. No. He has to inform me, only then I will know, na? Right? You have bought it to a deliverable state. How am I supposed to know they are bought to a deliverable state? I will know only when you inform me. So, when the goods are bought to a deliverable state and, my plus sign means obviously you know, and the buyer is informed. So if the goods are in a deliverable state, ownership, this is type of goods, this is transfer of ownership, right? This side is transfer type of goods, this side is transfer of ownership. So if the specific goods are in a deliverable state, ownership is transferred immediately. If the specific goods are not in a deliverable state, ownership is transferred after they are brought to a deliverable state and the buyer is informed. Is it clear to everyone? Yes. Now the third case, seller has a godown full of hay. I told you hay means not the hay wala hay. It means ghas foos wala hay. The seller has a godown full of hay and he says to the buyer, I want to sell this hay to you. Right? The seller has a godown full of hay and he says to the buyer, I want to sell this hay to you. Now tell me, in this case, and the buyer agrees, on the day of the delivery, the seller says, I want to get the hay weighed before I give it to you. When will the ownership be transferred? I repeat again, the seller has a godown full of hay and he says to the buyer, I want to sell this hay to you. The buyer agrees to purchase. He says, on the date of the delivery, he says, I want to get the hay weighed before I give it to you. When will the ownership be transferred? When he says, okay, when the tests are done. See, it is the seller's goods which he is selling. So, can we say he has a right to test the goods? It is the seller's goods that he is selling. Can we say he has a right to test the goods? Yes or no? Yes. So, if the seller has to conduct tests over the goods. Now, the whole point is why the seller has to conduct tests over the goods. To determine its price, quantity, quality, anything. I mean, for any reason he wants to conduct a test over the goods. He is the seller. He has a right to conduct tests. When will the ownership be transferred? After such tests. Right? When will the ownership be transferred? After such tests. Now, I am going to give you a few examples for the previous case also. So, listen very carefully. The book binding wala case. You go to the bookstore, you select 50 books and you say to the shopkeeper, I want you to bind these books and give it to me. He says, okay. When will the ownership be transferred? After they are bound and you are informed. Okay. Before the binding, the goods are burned down. Not due to the fault of any party. There is a fire and the books are burned down. Who will bear the loss? Seller? Okay. The books are bound and they are burned down. The books are bound and not due to the fault of any party, they are burnt down. Who will bear the loss? I know here some will be saying seller, some will be saying buyer. Think and tell me, the books are bound, but without any fault of any party, the books are burned down. Who will bear the loss? Seller. Because ownership is transferred after they are brought to a deliverable state and the buyer is informed. Correct. So, here information was not given. Who is the owner? Seller. Who will bear the loss? Seller. And the books are bound. The seller informs the buyer. Before the buyer collects the goods are burned down. The books are bound. The seller informs the buyer. Before the buyer could collect the books are burned down. Who will bear the loss? Buyer, because the ownership has transferred to the buyer. Now, seller has to conduct, so this hay, while he was weighing this hay, there was a fire and not due to the fault of any party and the entire hay is burnt down. Who will bear the loss? I repeat again, that hay wala example I told you, on the day of the delivery, he says, I want to get the hay weighed and then I'll give it to you. He says, okay. While he was weighing the hay was burned down. Who will bear the loss? Who will bear the loss? Seller, because the ownership is transferred after the test. Is it clear to everyone? Yes? The seller says to the buyer, listen carefully again, the seller says to the buyer, I have 20 quintals of hay which I want to sell you. Right? The seller says to the buyer, I have 20 quintals of hay which I want to sell you. The buyer agrees to purchase. Now, on the day of the delivery, the buyer says, I want to get the hay weighed. When will the owner? So, I repeat the case again. The seller says to the buyer, I have 20 quintals of hay which I want to sell you. The buyer agrees to purchase. When he comes to take the delivery, he says, I want to get the hay weighed. When will the ownership be transferred? You would say after it is being weighed. But When I say seller, the seller, because he is selling the goods, he was the owner of the goods, he has a right to conduct such tests. But if the buyer wants to conduct the test, we don't wait, the ownership is transferred immediately. So if the buyer wants to conduct the test, the ownership is transferred what? Immediately. Ma'am, but this is not correct. No, ma'am. Buyer has a right to examine the goods. After all, he's accepting the goods. He has a right to examine. Definitely, he has a right to examine. And I totally agree to what you say. But when he was accepting the goods, he could have said then and there, I accept the goods, but I want to examine the goods. Yes or no? When he was accepting the goods, he could have said then and there, I am accepting the goods, but I also want to examine the goods. Did he say? No. He said, okay, I am willing to purchase. The moment he said, I am willing to purchase the goods, the ownership has been transferred. If he would have said, I am willing to purchase, but I will get it weighed first, then in that case, after it was weighed, only then the ownership would be transferred. After it was weighed, only then the ownership will transfer. Correct or not? But when it does not specify anything, ownership is transferred immediately. While the hay was being weighed, the hay is burned down. Right? While the hay was being weighed, the hay is burned down. Tell me, who will bear the loss? Obviously, buyer will bear the loss. Is it clear to everyone? Yes. So, in case of specific goods, if the goods are in a deliverable state, ownership is transferred immediately. If the goods are not in a deliverable state, ownership is transferred after they are brought to a deliverable state and the buyer is informed. If the seller has to conduct the test over the goods for any reason whatsoever, the ownership is transferred only after the tests are conducted. However, if the buyer has to conduct the test over the goods, the ownership is transferred immediately. Is it clear to everyone? Yes. So, the next case is in case of unascertained goods. Before I go into this unascertained goods, it is important for us to understand what is unascertained goods, which are not identified but they are only described, right? So when I say I want 100 liters of coconut oil, any oil I say, when will the ownership be transferred? So when I say 100 liters of coconut oil, can I say the goods are unascertained goods? Yes. So when will the ownership be transferred for such goods? I repeat again, for those who don't understand unascertained goods, it will be difficult. Please understand, unascertained goods means what? I am only giving a description of the goods. I am not identifying the goods. So when I say I want 100 liters of coconut oil, I have given a description. What kind of goods are these? Unascertained. For unascertained goods, ownership is transferred after the goods are ascertained and appropriated. For unascertained goods, ownership is transferred after the goods are ascertained and appropriated. What do I mean by ascertaining? What do I mean by appropriation? Now listen carefully, 5 minutes. What is ascertained? Goods answering the description. Goods answering the description are identified and set apart. Right? What is ascertained? Goods answering the description are identified and set apart. So the moment I say to the seller, I want 100 liters of coconut oil, what he will do is he will go to his total stock of oil, and out of that total stock of oil, he will take out that 100 liters. I repeat again, when I say to the seller, I want 100 liters of coconut oil, what he will do is he will immediately go to his total stock of oil, and out of that total stock of oil, he will take out that 100 liters. His act of taking out this 100 liters is ascertaining the goods. So what is ascertained goods? As per the description of the goods given, the goods are set apart. This is what? This is ascertained. So goods answering the description are identified and set apart. Now listen carefully. When I say goods answering the description are set apart, that means out of the total stock the goods are taken out. Will it be done by the seller, or you as a buyer can enter the premises of the seller and do it? Can you enter the premises of the seller and do it, or it can be done only by the seller? Obviously, you cannot enter his property and do it. So it can be done only by the seller. So understand, ascertain is the unilateral act of the seller. So this is the unilateral act of the seller. Is it clear? Yes. So I repeat again, what is ascertain? As per my description given, when the seller takes out the goods and keeps it apart, it is known as ascertain. Goods answering the description are identified and set apart. If you remember, ascertained goods, right? Now the goods are set apart, but we need to finally deliver the goods. So that is appropriation. What is appropriation? Selection of the goods. What is appropriation? Selection of the goods with the consent of both the parties. Who is both the parties here? Obviously the seller and buyer. With the consent of both the parties for the performance of the contract. For the performance of the contract. So what do I mean by this? What do I mean by this? After the goods are set apart, they will confirm with each other that are the goods set apart, so that the delivery can be completed and the contract can be performed. Contract will be performed only after the completion of the delivery of the goods, yes or no? I repeat again, once the goods are ascertained, both the parties confirm with each other so that they can finally deliver the goods. When the seller has kept aside the goods, he may call the buyer and say that I have kept aside 100 liters of coconut oil, should I deliver the goods? Or he may say, I have set aside 100 liters of coconut oil, are you ready to take the delivery of the goods? Or the buyer may call the seller and say that have you kept aside 100 liters of oil, are you ready to deliver? Or have you kept aside 100 liters of coconut oil, should I come and take the delivery? This is appropriation. So once the goods are set apart, they both confirm with each other the identity of the goods so that the final delivery can take place. Now understand, if the contract is silent, doesn't say anything about appropriation, then if the seller gives the delivery, the seller has appropriated. If the buyer takes the delivery, the buyer has appropriated. Right? If the contract is silent about who is appropriating, then if the seller gives the delivery, the seller has appropriated. If the buyer takes the delivery, the buyer has appropriated. Correct? So I repeat again, in case of unascertained goods, ownership is transferred after the goods are ascertained and appropriated. What is ascertained? As per the description of the goods are set apart. Right? As per the description of the goods are set apart. Now once the goods are set apart, the parties confirm with each other so that the final delivery can take place. This is what appropriation. I'll give you a very simple example. Listen carefully. Let us say I go to the store and I say I want an HP laptop pen. Right? I go to the store and I say I want an HP laptop pen. What kind of goods are these? Unascertained. As soon as I say, what will the shopkeeper do? He will go to his total stock of pen. And out of that total stock of pen, he will take out this HP pen. What has he done? Ascertain. Now he will come and say, ma'am, this pen you are looking for. I'll be like, yes, this is the pen I want. This is what? Appropriation. Is it clear to everyone? Are you sure about it? Are you clear with it? Yes. Did you understand? Yes. I hope this topic is clear to everyone. Yes. If this topic helped you, leave a like and a comment. Thank you so much. Happy learning and stay motivated.